a little warning beforehand. You see I'm coming on screen for the first time here, and that sounds absolutely horrible, I know, but I wanted to say before this video begins that there are going to be spoilers for The Flash. The movie just came out a couple of days ago, so I know if you don't want to have anything be spoiled for it, I'd advise you to turn this video off right now and go see the film and and have your own opinion on it. But if you have seen the film, this video is talking about why I think The Flash failed at the box office, my thoughts on the film, and some things that might be considered pretty controversial, considering how everybody else is showing appreciation towards the film. We're going to be talking about some of the stuff that happened behind the scenes and some of the stuff within the movie itself. So like I said, you don't want to be spoiled by any of that. If you don't want to hear this, feel free to go to another video. So with that said, let's begin the conversation. Hello everybody, and welcome once again to another preview of the Reviewing Network Live, where we're going to be covering movies and entertainment in general, like television, all that kind of stuff, and of course the biggest stories of the week. And quite honestly, I don't think there's a bigger story going on right now in the entertainment industry, obviously besides the writer's strike and all that, than what's going on with The Flash. Let me just say right now, we are going to delve into a lot of stuff about this movie, including my thoughts on the film. I finally got to see it not too long ago, is over the last couple of days, I should say, and I have my thoughts on it here, and there's a lot to say about it, not just in terms of the movie itself, but also with the many controversies that this film has, and we're going to delve into every single one of them on this particular video. I'm gonna say right now, I'm gonna try my best to be as candid as I can. I'm gonna try not to swear as much because trust me, I'm not gonna be able to control myself if I accidentally let out some swears in this particular case here. But this movie, I have some things to say about it. Some of it's not gonna be pretty, but we need to talk about some of this stuff here. So not only are you going to get my review of the movie, I'm going to go into details on why this film failed miserably, on not just at the box office, but as a film in general, and how they tried to save this as much as they can in a desperate attempt to save it, if you will. This is my video talking about what went wrong with The Flash. Now, before we get negative, let me tell you my thoughts on the film itself. I'll basically just tell you that, straight off the bat, I really did not like this movie. I went in there to give it the benefit of a doubt. I do this all the time with movies that I hear so many bad things about, and I try my best to kind of push everything off to the side and actually view the film as its own. I've always said that you can't judge a book by its cover. You need to give the movie its fair day in court. And to the movie's credit, there are good things about it. There are some good things about it that I'm going to talk about right now. And I guess I'll start off with, I thought that for the most part the performances were okay. I thought Ezra Miller as a whole, as Barry Allen, the regular Barry Allen, I thought he was very good. I thought he handled a lot of the acting in this very well when it's just him. When he has to play the younger version of himself, however, is a completely different story, but we'll delve into that as we go along. But needless to say, when he plays the younger version of himself, it gets really annoying really fast. But I did like Sasha Calle playing Supergirl. I thought that was a really cool, interesting way of bringing her into here. And I kind of hope that she does come back in future movies, honestly, when they do this new redevelopment of DC over the next couple of years. I hope they find a way to keep her in there as well. And yeah, it is cool to see Michael Keaton back in this role again as Bruce Wayne, even though you can tell that this is not the same Bruce Wayne from Batman and Batman Returns. But it feels cool to see him in there. Like, I really wish we could have gotten to see him in that other movie that I'm going to delve into in just a little bit. But I thought he was pretty good in there. I thought that the emotional moments in here actually did work very well. I especially like the last 15 minutes where you see, Barry trying to reconnect with his mother and the way that he has to say goodbye to her. I thought that was very well done. I thought they did a very good job of handling that, and it was easily one of the best thing about the movie, I will say. And I also like the fact that they did something that a movie that came out the previous year, which I really despise, which was Lightyear, failed to do. Like in Lightyear, the big twist in there is that Zurg is actually an older version of Buzz Lightyear, and it's done in the most horrific way possible. It's not clever whatsoever. It's so poorly done. There's a point in here where you get a darker Flash, and the big difference is that in this movie compared to what they did in the previous movie is Lightyear, I should say. Because in this movie, the whole point is that the Barry that we're following, the main Barry, is trying to figure out a way to save his mother from getting killed. And because we've seen this character in so many other movies in the past, we've finally gotten a connection between him and us, the audience. We can follow along in his story and follow along in his adventure in trying to save his mother through these different timelines, and we find out that he is so committed to this that he ends up going into a villainous turn. And I thought they did this a whole lot better here than they did in Lightyear, because in Lightyear there was no real connection between the Buzz Lightyear they had in there and the older Buzz Lightyear that eventually becomes Zurg. I thought that was an idea that just did not work at all. It was a bad idea altogether. But in the Flash, they actually found a way to make it work. I was actually really surprised at how they were able to make it work in this case, and for that, I have to give the movie its proper credits for that. I also like how they brought Ben Affleck back as Batman. Like, he's been the one consistent in terms of how they've done Batman in these DCEU films. He's been great in the films. I kind of wish that he'd gotten his own solo film to maybe get a chance to really show what he can do, but as it is, he was probably one of the strongest things about playing Batman in these movies. Of course, besides the Batman with Robert Pattinson. But then again, I don't think that's technically considered part of the DCEU. But yeah, that's a lot of the good things I liked about the movie. I mean, there was about maybe 20 minutes of the movie that I thought was really, really solid. But the bad news is there's still 2 hours of stuff that I really did not like about it, and I might as well go into those bad things, and we'll be delving into some of these, because I actually have a list right here next to my camera here that I actually remembered to take note of what I wanted to talk about here. So those are the positives that I liked about the movie. Now let's go ahead and go back to some of the controversies that are surrounding this movie first, before I delve into my negative thoughts on the film. So let's start with the obvious one, and that is, of course, Ezra Miller and his many controversies and legal issues that he's been dealing with for the last couple of years. It kind of started back in 2011, before he'd even become a star. He was arrested in Pittsburgh when he was doing the Perks of Being a Wallflower for a broken brake light, and they found out he had 20 grams of marijuana in his possession, and he was charged with drug possession and got a penalty of $600 for 2 citations of disorderly conduct. But that was from back before he became a star. Like, once he became the Flash, and now we get into 2020, there was a video that surfaced in a since deleted tweet that showed Miller strangling a woman and throwing her to the ground. And this took place at a bar in Iceland that Miller frequently went into the city in, and a bar employee identified him as Miller, who was escorted off the premises. And then 2 years later, after that video came out, Miller claimed that the strangulation was a spontaneous reaction spurred by a group of teenagers over his mixed martial arts skills. Which, okay, whatever, dude. But here's where it gets kind of really uncomfortable to talk about, because that March of 2022, he was actually arrested in Hawaii for a physical altercation with patrons about hurling obscenities at customers at a karaoke bar, charged once again with disorderly conduct and harassment. And then he later claimed that they became enraged after being accosted by a Nazi, and Miller claimed that they were being unlawfully persecuted, and they accused the officers of intentionally committing a hate crime. And again, Miller was taken into custody for second-degree assault, and arrested for throwing a chair, hitting a 26-year-old woman, leaving a half-inch cut on her forehead, and arrested 20 minutes after the attack, and pleaded no contest, $500 disorderly conduct charge. There was a restraining order that was not too long after that, after he went into the bedroom and threatened the person that he hit, Well, what happened was Miller allegedly barged into the bedroom of this couple and threatened them hours after they were released. He was released from his arrest from that altercation, and they accused him of stealing a passport as well as a wallet containing a social security card, driver's license, and bank cards. And then shortly afterward, the couple later withdrew that position on April 11th. Then we get to June of 2022, when the Standing Rock Sioux Tribal Court issued a temporary order of protection against Miller on behalf of an 18-year-old activist, Tokata Ionize, and her parents, Chase Ionize and Sarah Jumping Eagle, requested the court order because they said Miller's use of violence, intimidation, threat of violence, fear, paranoia, delusions, and drugs to hold sway over children. The relationship between Miller and Ionize was something that happened when he did the Fantastic Beasts movies in 2016, when Miller was 23 and Eyes was 12, including Eyes flying out to London while he was working on Fantastic Beasts 2. She dropped out of school, which her parents believed she did in order to follow Miller. Her parents also stated in court that Miller had caused bruise on the child's body. Miller had groomed and manipulated her. It gets pretty deep on here on this subject. And in August, they said that Ezra Miller's music collaborator said that he actually witnessed him verbally abuse Iron Eyes over her wearing makeup. Iron Eyes still defended Miller by referring to the incident as a catty comment or a part of queer dialogue, calling the allegation of abuse homophobic. And a former resident of Miller's farm in Vermont, Miller's believed that people criticize their relationship with Iron Eyes because she is an apocalyptic Native American-inspired Christ who, along with Miller as Jesus Christ, will bring an indigenous revolution. And Miller also refers to them as a messiah to Native Americans, although Miller does not have any indigenous ancestry in the sole person making this claim. Like, you see how crazy this is getting here? And that's just and we're not even done with this yet. It keeps going. So not too long so in June of that same month, June 2022, a mother and her 12-year-old child were granted a temporary harassment prevention order against Miller in Massachusetts after Miller threatened the woman's family, showed inappropriate behavior towards the child. They showed up at the family's house unexpectedly wearing a bulletproof vest and brandishing a gun before pestering the child before uncomfortably touching the child's hips. Like, it keeps going, man. Like, it keeps really going. And it was revealed that Miller had been housing a woman they met in Hilo, Hawaii, and her 3 children on Miller's farm in Vermont since April of 2022. Allegations from sources said that, as well as the child's father, are that guns and ammunition are easily accessible to children who are 1 to 5 years old. The 1-year-old put a loose bullet in his mouth. Her mouth, I should say. The woman claimed that Miller was offering them a shelter from her ex-husband, who she alleged was abusive. There was claims of assault rifles being propped up on piles of the children's stuffed animals, heavy marijuana use with people smoking marijuana in front of the children in rooms without proper ventilation. A witness stating that he saw Miller blow marijuana smoke in the baby's face and used her arm to wave more smoke in the baby's direction. Miller apparently was running a large unlicensed marijuana cultivation operation, and then finally, in August, they approached the residence and reportedly attempted to serve the mother an emergency care order that demanded the child's removal from her care, and the homeowners fear for their safety because of a caseworker's affidavit. The state attorney's office had requested 2 emergency care orders over the past week that sought to legal custody of the children over to the state. And there was a burglary charge not long after that. There was surveillance footage of him stealing bottles of alcohol that led him to being arraigned in court in September of 2022, and then that arraignment got pushed back, and then January 13th, that trespassing plea and the guilty to trespassing thing happened in January 2023, and then finally in August of 2022, Miller said that he apologized for his past behavior because he had recently gone through a time of intense crisis. He has complex mental health issues, this is not something that you used as an excuse, dude. Like, it was also believed that his relationship with Iron Eyes would bring about the apocalypse, and Freemasons were sending demons to kill him. This dude is out of his mind. Like, I'm reading off the stuff, all these charges here, and it's just like, no sane person who runs a major studio would still continue to allow this to happen as these charges kept building up here. Like, you want to try to save this person, that's fine. You know what you don't try to do? You don't try to push it under the rug and say, it's okay. I mean, we're going to get him into rehab. He's going to be just fine. Like, not everybody can be Robert Downey Jr. Not everybody can be like Charlie Sheen, where they go to rehab and successfully come back. And it's crazy to think that no studio would be crazy enough to do that, except, oh wait, one studio was. Which brings us to the next thing we need to talk about, and that is the head of Warner Brothers, David Zaslav. Now, if you didn't know who David Zaslav was before August of last year, you certainly know him now, because ever since this guy became the president of Warner Brothers Discovery when Discovery and Warner Brothers merged in 2021. There's been a lot to criticize him for, and none of that was bigger than what he did starting in August of 2022. None bigger than starting off his plans to cut $25 billion off the company's market cap with a doozy. Of course, I'm talking about getting rid of Batgirl, not putting the film out altogether, but never letting it be released because the company decided that it did not work, and they wanted to make DC Films big theatrical event films, and this was among one of the most expensive canceled cinematic projects ever. I mean, this is a film that had a $90 million budget. It had two hot directors, Adil El Arbi and Bilal Fallah, who did Bad Boys for Life, and it was starring a hot young actress at the time, Leslie Grace, who had starred in The Heights a year prior to this. And it also had Michael Keaton as Batman in there, as well as Brendan Fraser pre-Oscars, as well as J.K. Simmons as James Gordon. So what happened was, test screenings apparently were so negative that was seen as a factor in WB's decision. WB decided was determined to spend an additional $7 to $9 million in an effort to bring the film to theaters, such as Shazam! Fury of the Gods. They decided not to do it because they said, and I quote, would be fruitless to do so. Variety and a lot of other people said, however, that was not the case. It was part of the studio's larger cost-cutting methods, given the budget increase from an initial $70 million to $90 million, and the desire of DC Films to be theatrical blockbusters. And test audience, Deadline Hollywood said that test showings showed temporary versions of the visual effects, which tend to tamper audience enthusiasms. Like I've talked about this before. Like, you can't really have test screenings be the main reason for you to not accept to get rid of something. Like, of course, the biggest one of all was The Little Mermaid, the original Little Mermaid, when Jeffrey Katzenberg at the time wanted to get rid of Part of Your World because he thought the song wasn't working, kids were getting bored, and everyone was trying to defend it, saying that it was just the fact that the movie wasn't completed, the animation wasn't completed. You have to keep that in the film. It's the heart of the film. And Glenn Keane, Howard Ashman, they fought long and hard to keep that in the movie. And eventually they succeeded, and lo and behold, it's one of the most memorable things about the movie. The reason why Batgirl was written off was because of a tax break, which basically meant that the people who made the movie had no way to get the copies of it. They actually found this out when they were in a wedding for El Arbi. They were handed that news, and they had no way to get their film out there. They attempted to log back into the Warner Brothers servers to get as much footage as they could, but it was already too late. Warner Brothers basically got rid of it. That even though they did set up secret screenings of the unfinished film to the cast and crew, so they've seen the film, and and it just led to the infamous canceling and destruction of pretty much everything they had ready to go. Stuff that was already well late into the post-production. Scoob Holiday Hunt was supposed to be an animated movie that was supposed to come out on HBO Max that year, and it never did. It got canceled, and I think they actually did save it. I did hear at one point they said that, but I could be wrong on that. He also received backlash for removing many of Warner Brothers' animated programs from streaming platforms and pulling the service from the content in general from HBO Max, including Final Space, which was written off by taxes, Infinity Train, Summer Camp Island, Close Enough, The Not Too Late Show with Elmo, 200 episodes of Sesame Street, all taken off and written off as tax write-offs. Like it's unbelievable how one guy shows so much of a disdain for something that does not make any sense whatsoever. There has to be other things in that studio that you could have taken out of there to try to save money, to save your studio from being in debt for this kind of a debt. I mean, it's amazing that that somebody there was okay with this. Nobody ever got on him because of that. Like, Bob Chapek was not that great of an executive at Disney. And what happened? What happened? They got rid of him and put Bob Iger back. And it's not saying that Disney is currently better off where they're at right now, but they're certainly in a much better place they were last year. I mean, for Bob Chapek to go out there and say that we don't care about basically say we don't care about animated movies anymore. and from a studio that had their career solidified by animated movies, like these animated characters that have been almost 100 years old, and it's been part of what makes Disney so special. And for him to just come out and say that, I feel like that was the straw that broke the camel's back in terms of Chapek being the president of Disney. They got rid of him, and so Disney trying to fix their problems right now, but they are far better off than where Warner Brothers is right now in the way that he handled that stuff. And of course, everybody was pissed off at him for doing that, and it's like he doesn't care. It's like he does not care that this is that he's doing this type of stuff, because he's clearly got more of a focus on not just Warner Brothers, but incorporating more of Discovery, his incredible assortment of Discovery Channel shows, which, by the way, the Discovery Channel has regressed big time, because they have been more focused on not just reality shows, more shows involving the Gaines family and the 90 Day Fiance. I'll never forget when I saw the thing when they announced Max and all the franchises that they had in mind, and one of them was the 90 Day Fiance universe. Like, what universe could you have to bring to this table? I mean, seriously, dude. And he had this problem when he was working at Discovery. He's the sole reason why the hub fell apart so quickly as he did, because he took it over and just changed it around so badly that it was a shell of what made the hub so great in the first couple of years of its run. I mean, this is a terrible, terrible CEO, and yet he still has a job 2 years into his tenure, and almost a year after he pulls this crap. It's just asinine. It's unbelievable that he did this. And again, people are praising him. I don't even think people praised him, honestly. I think that I'm reading something here that he was named one of Time's 100 most influential people in 2022. I thought that was after he made these decisions. No, this was made before that, in May. And I'm pretty sure they'd look at this again and go, I've made a terrible mistake. So of course, David Zaslav helped him try to get past the controversy and say that, oh, it's okay, guys. He's cool. Ezra Miller's perfectly fine. We don't need to worry about his problems and all that. Everything's going to be just fine with him. Don't you worry about it. Yeah. We'll get into more of that in just a little bit. But let's move on to the next thing about this, and that is, of course, how WB handled this controversy with Ezra Miller. So Warner Brothers had to deal with the situation. The head of the company, Miller and their agent went to the heads of Warner Brothers and said they apologized for his behavior, the negative headlines the film received as a result. And this came after Miller was spooked by the prospects of the film being canceled. They were literally going to shelve the film, but they decided not to. So just think about that. Batgirl got shelved so easily, but this movie gets by okay. Can you see where the problem would be in that? The visual effects work was expected to be completed by the end of the year, which, if you saw the film, just like I did, we'll get to that, because holy mother of God. They tried to say that the rumors of the film getting shelved were false, which, come on, man, like, you can't not really say that after what I've just told you and what had happened before. It's just like, this is getting ridiculous. So they moved the release date up to June 16th, and then they decided to keep Cavill within the continuity and reshot the ending. There was going to be an ending where Cavill shot his part for the ending of Black Adam, which Black Adam was not a big hit, did not turn out to be a hit. In fact, it turned out to be a huge financial loss for the studio. Let me see if I can find it here. This thing would lose 50 to 100. This thing was going to lose 50 to 100 million dollars when that movie came out. It was a box office bomb. So, yeah, the DCEU was pretty much done at this point. It's pretty much over at this point. So they reshot an ending. They shot several endings. They shot one ending with Cavill as Superman. They shot one where Gal Gadot was in a scene with her in a scene. They shot one with Cavill and Affleck in a scene. And the original ending shot was actually supposed to be Keaton's Batman, Sasha Calle's Supergirl, continuing to exist in the timeline, but essentially erasing Cavill and Affleck's roles in the process. And then we get the ending that they brought in for this movie, which they literally shot shot before is mere weeks before the movie was coming out. And actually, no, that's actually not true. They actually shot this in January, but it was kept under wraps until June, where of course we have George Clooney reprising his role as Bruce Wayne, which I have to admit, I like that they gave George Clooney a chance again to play Bruce Wayne, because really, when you think about it, George Clooney was not the biggest problem with Batman and Robin. Everything else about it was, which I'm going to review that on Time About the Movies pretty soon, so I'll save most of my complaints about that film for then. But we shot the ending for this. I think like I said before, the ending I thought worked pretty well. So I don't think it was that big of a deal when they did that. So, it's the way the WB tried to handle this and tried to build a buzz up to this, because let's face it, you cannot market this movie as well as you want it to because of the legal issues that are going on with Ezra Miller. WB focused on marketing the film itself, so rather than focusing on Miller, they decided to sideline Miller and pivot towards the director Andy Muschietti, who also did the It movies. They had I think it's his wife, Barbara Muschietti, and then Sasha Calle to promote the film, and they made intense efforts to highlight Keaton's role in Batman to introduce nostalgia to it. Though I thought the reception to it overall was not a good idea, and then they had they thought it was too. It's going to get into my complaints about the movie. They thought it was too much like Spider-Man No Way Home, which if you've seen the film, it's way too much like Spider-Man No Way Home. But this is the part that really just irks me. It irks me what they tried to do here with this, because they basically went out to specific figures. They went out to Stephen King, Martin Scorsese, and Tom Cruise to improve the discourse surrounding the film. And they got them to say high praises about it, which at that point I was just like, take a step back, guys. I mean, seriously, you're going to get... First of all, Stephen King, Tom Cruise, and Martin Scorsese have made films with Warner Brothers. Of course, Martin Scorsese had that rift between the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where he said that those movies aren't cinema. So, of course, WB is going to try to build the hype for the DC fans to get them hyped up for this, because they're going to say, well, if Martin Scorsese is saying this and he criticized Marvel movies, it has to be good. And then this hurt me the most. James Gunn basically saying it's among the greatest superhero movies of all time, which, James Gunn, come on, dude. Like, what are you doing, man? Like, you, of all people, after what you've been through with getting released from the Guardians movies because of tweets that somebody else found that Disney already had known about before, or they even hired you the first time, but luckily they brought you back. And just like, to say that as among the greatest superhero movies of all time, you guys are covering your asses for this. Like, you set incredibly high expectations for this, and this is not the first Batman movie. This is not the first Superman movie. This is not The Dark Knight. This is not... I'll even go as far as to say this is not Batman v Superman, how you hype these movies up, but you're just trying to cover your asses at this point. It's just like, it's not even funny on the way you're doing it. Like, you're doing the worst possible thing. You're giving your fans way too much hope in something when you started this the whole way through, and now you're just trying to cover your asses for something, because now that you said it, it's got to be your sticking point here. Like, you can't take it back. Like, I'm sorry, among the greatest superhero movies of all time, like, that was the worst one. Like James Gunn, I expected a lot better from you, because I have high hopes for you in turning this around again. But man, when you said that just really disappointed me that he said that, because James Gunn is a talented director. He's a talented filmmaker, and I'm excited to see what he brings to the new DC revival. But him saying it's among the greatest superhero movies of all time, that was just so bad. That was just a badly executed move on their part, because the results show that even the people that like the movie say it ain't that great. So, but that brings us to the reviews for the film. Let's talk about Rotten Tomatoes. So the reviews started coming out for The Flash about 2 weeks before the movie was coming out, and so everybody went to Rotten Tomatoes, and Rotten Tomatoes actually gave it some pretty good reviews. Now you would think that Warner Brothers would use this to sell the movie. They put it in their advertisements, but no. You want to know what they did? They took Twitter reviews, and not even from film critics. They didn't even try to do that. They took it from DC fans, and maybe, I don't know, maybe some of them were critics as well. But of all the things you use to market this movie, why are you going to use Twitter reviews instead of the positive reviews you got on Rotten Tomatoes? I mean, 67% right now as I'm speaking, so it's not a badly reviewed film, but then again, it's Rotten Tomatoes, and I've criticized Rotten Tomatoes a lot lately. But before I delve into why I want to criticize them the most, here's something that you need to know about Rotten Tomatoes before we move forward. Rotten Tomatoes is owned by Warner Brothers. They have a part-time stake in it, 25%, I think I said, and then 75% of it is Universal, which Universal and Warner Brothers pretty much have the same distributor when it comes to physical media, so it's basically the same company. Of course, Rotten Tomatoes is going to push it to make this movie seem like it's got a better reception than it actually does. Like, Chris Stuckman did a review for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, which comes out in a couple weeks, but I think he did a very good job of talking about what film criticism has essentially devolved into. He basically says we also live in a world now where film criticism has been blended with film journalism and entertainment hosts, and the whole idea of actually talking about a film with any nuance has almost universally lost its meaning, which is very sad. He says I could still go back and read Roger Ebert's reviews, and I feel like I'm really getting to the root of the film when I listen to the way he spoke about films, and he just doesn't feel that anymore. He feels like we've become so binary. It's either good or it's bad, it's great or it's awful, and there's no room for nuance anymore, which he thinks is just awful, which he then talked about the nitpicks of the film. But he makes a good point. Like, film criticism isn't the way it used to be. The days of Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel and Richard Roeper and all these critics that we grew up admiring and wanted to become, that's no longer there anymore. And it's not gone, but it's definitely taken a backseat to these people that want to try to make the argument that they are real critics, but it's a weird thing right now. It's a very tough time. I try my best when it comes to these movies to be like what Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel and Richard Roeper were. These are guys that were my influences to wanting to become a film reviewer, and I've always thought I've tried my best at it. I don't think I'm that great at it, but I get where Chris is coming from. I completely agree with what he's saying, and I really respect him a lot as somebody who not only is a really good film reviewer, but clearly is somebody with the intentions to really love movies. And I think he brought up a good point in that particular case, that like film criticism is just not where you want it to be at this point. And I think in this case here, you could just tell that this was something that you can't really buy a lot into the reviews for this movie, because of what I'm about to talk about here. There's a lot of elements in this movie that really do not work whatsoever. And yet people are praising this type of a film when we're going to talk about other movies that were thrashed by critics that actually had better elements to it than this movie does. And I'm going to start off with the biggest problem with the film, and that is the special effects. So we have the special effects in this movie, and they have been hotly contested. A lot of people really do not like the way this movie looks, but according to the director, though, they're intentionally supposed to be this weird looking and not that great. And I'm sorry, man, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying that you really believe that these are good effects. Like, the fact that you've had these visual effects done up until December of last year was just like, it's just like, really, dude? Like, you can't just admit that you have terrible effects in this movie. There are really bad special effects in this movie. The visuals are so abysmal to watch in this. Like, moments where you're supposed to stand up and cheer. Like, you're supposed to have that moment when you see the Avengers that were snapped by Thanos in the Endgame coming back to fight in the big battle in the end. Moments like when you see Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and Tom Holland in the same shot in Spider-Man No Way Home. Moments like that should be grand and epic and have the best special effects imaginable. In this movie, there are several moments that should have been standout moments. You have a scene where you have the Christopher Reeve Superman and the Helen Slater Supergirl meeting up. And this should have been a great moment, an emotional moment here. The effects on them look horrible. Like, I have no idea what they were thinking with that. Like, it looks like they were deep-faked on, and they didn't even try to fix it. Like, the technology has gotten to a point where you can make this work. I mean, let me pick up another movie, Ghostbusters Afterlife. How'd they bring Egon Spengler back, even though Harold Ramis is dead? It's the way they did it, and it was one of the best moments of the movie. It was the one thing that everyone remembers from that movie, and it was one of the reasons why I love that movie so much, to be my favorite movie of 2021. And, like, for this to do that is just ridiculous. And not even that. Of course, one of the things that they spoiled right away with it is that a week before the film came out was that Nicolas Cage was going to play Superman. Of course, you know the story about how Nicolas Cage was supposed to be the Superman in Tim Burton's Superman Lives, and one of the biggest things that was going to happen was that he was going to fight a giant spider. And, again, should be a great scene, should work very well, because, you know, Nicolas Cage is still alive. He clearly would like to play this role at some point. I mean, he played it in Teen Titans Go to the Movies, an animated film, and when I watched him in that scene, a scene that should have been so awesome, so amazing, it's just not there. Like, it feels like he wasn't even on set. It feels so lifeless, and like, it's just a mess. And I don't think a better way to sum up that scene is perfect enough when you have a scene that literally is showing both of those worlds, the Reeves and Slater worlds and the Nicolas Cage world, splattering together. It feels like the movie is digging up the graves of the older Superman properties and bringing them back so they can just destroy them in a way that's just so unbelievably terrible to watch. I mean, it's abysmal how bad these effects are. And when people complain about the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, there are times when you're right. There are times when the special effects need to be criticized. I said it before with Quantum Mania. MODOK looks horrible, and whoever approved that should have been fired. But you know what? MODOK still looks a lot better than the deep-fake Christopher Reeve you have in here. You know, the visuals in For Love and Thunder look a whole lot better than anything you showed in the moments that are supposed to be so important to the film in terms of the emotional aspect. But that's just one of those things that it takes away from the enjoyment of the film for me. The terrible visual effects, the cameos that are supposed to be really cool. Like, Michael Keaton is great as Batman, but man, when he puts on the bat cowl again, and his line readings at times really feels like he's just cashing a paycheck. Like, I never really felt like he really wanted to be involved in this particular film. Like, it didn't feel like he was fully committed to this, and it's a shame too. Like, there is so much that needed to work with this. Like, you could have all the cameos in there, but the visuals just aren't flying in this case here, and it just hurts the movie big time. It's a major reason why this film is so terrible. They took an opportunity that should have worked so easily, and they blew it. They blew it on bad visual effects, and it just doesn't work. Like, it's the reason why I'm going to say this, and I'm going to probably be very controversial about it, because, you know, I really do feel this way. This is the worst movie of 2023. All the build-up you had for this, you conned all these people that you had one of the greatest movies ever made, one of the greatest superhero movies of all time, and this was the end result. A terribly put together film that has 20 minutes of great stuff, but 2 hours of content you really have to, like, grind your teeth and struggle to get through. This is absolute garbage. Like, this is a terrible movie. I cannot believe how bad this movie is, and I can't believe how many people are defending this movie. Like, listen, you want to defend the movie, go ahead. I'm not going to. It's like I've always said, we live in a place where freedom of speech is allowed. You should be allowed to say whatever you want to, and I should be allowed to say whatever I want to too, and face the consequences of it. Because I know some people out there are going to get mad about what I'm saying here, but I'm sorry. Like, I just didn't see what everybody else saw on it. I think people are so starstruck by the fact that they got these people involved that they haven't seen in a long time. I mean, Michael Keaton's great to have back, yeah, but if he's not involved in a good movie, then what's the point? And, like, that's another thing that really bugs me about this. They praise this movie as the greatest superhero movie of all time. Like, and to end up as bad as it is, how bad was Batgirl that you felt like you had to cancel that? Like, how seriously bad did that movie have to be in order for this movie to get a release, but that doesn't? I don't. We'll probably never know, but yeah, honestly, it's one of the worst. It's the worst movie I've seen in 2023 because of one, the build up, two, trying to keep it going despite everything that was going on behind the scenes. 3, trying to hype it up to an extreme point. 4, trying to defend your stupidity by thinking these visual effects that are not great are supposed to be the point, and just trying to cover your asses on every single thing. And you failed miserably to make this movie any sort of entertainment. Like, I would rather watch any other movie in the DCEU than watch this one again. Like, I'll watch Batman v Superman again because at least the visual effects in there were trying. You know, Suicide Squad was at least trying with its visual effects, so was Wonder Woman. It feels like it wasn't there this time around. It's just like, and I just don't get it. I don't get what everybody saw in this to try to defend this as much as they can. But then again, they're allowed to have their opinions, like I'm allowed to have mine. I'm probably going to be one of the few people that puts this as the worst movie of 2023 because I really don't know how worse you could possibly get. Like, a really terrible movie has to come out within the next 6 months. Because, yeah, this is June. In the next 6 months, there has to be a movie that's just as terrible and has so much hype built on it to make this not be the worst film of the year. It's going to be tough to do. Like, this isn't even like when I had Batman v Superman as the worst movie of 2016 because it's this generation's Phantom Menace. No, this movie is bad on a number of levels. It's a film that I never want to watch again. Even for the stuff that I liked about it, I never want to watch this movie again. I mean, I'm upset. I think a lot of people really should be upset too, but nope, just not enough there. And I'm just rambling on here, but honestly, those are my thoughts on the film. If you couldn't tell, I give the film a major thumbs down. I didn't think anything would top 80 for Brady for the worst movie of the year so far, and lo and behold, I was proven wrong. But then again, I might be proven wrong again on The Flash. Maybe some terrible movie will come out, but it's by the time I do my best and worst of 2023 at the end of December. So, I know I'm just rambling on here, so let me just go on to my last point. And that last point is the DC Extended Universe, and we should be just saying that thank God that this is ending, because this was a disaster right from the beginning. When they first announced the DCEU, they had this plan that they were going to have all these movies coming out, and only 3 years to prepare for it. 3 years to prepare for it. You know, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I'm pretty sure, took more than 3 years to do it, and they took their time with it. They knew that they had to see if this was actually going to work. That's why you had Iron Man tease the possibility of an Avengers movie. They had to see how Iron Man was going to work. They were going to see what Incredible Hulk was going to do, as well as when Incredible Hulk didn't perform as well as Iron Man, they were actually going to not do the MCU at that point. But then Iron Man 2 was a decent hit critically, not financially, I should say. And then Thor and Captain America were critical and financial hits, and then that's how we got the Avengers, and that's where the MCU has gone since then. But no, in 2014 they announced 11 films before Batman v Superman ever came out, which, like I said before, they only took probably a third of how long it took the Marvel Cinematic Universe to really set this whole thing up, and the results have been very mixed. You know, Man of Steel was a good movie. I will say that Man of Steel was a decent Superman movie directed by a guy who clearly did not want to make a Superman movie. I still stand by the belief that Zack Snyder wanted to make a Batman film so much that he had no interest in making a Superman film, but he made a decent one with the first film, but then it kind of went downhill a little bit after that. Batman v Superman was not that great. Suicide Squad was not that great. They had finally found a winner with Wonder Woman, which was great for a majority of the film. The last 10 minutes were not that great because it had a lot of the same problems that Batman v Superman and Suicide Squad had. I'm one of the few people that actually likes the Joss Whedon Justice League. I can't say if the Zack Snyder cut is any good because I vow never to watch it because that thing has a hell of its own, like behind the scenes, like everything from not existing at first to bots essentially making it a reality pretty much, but that's a whole other thing altogether. We got some good movies after that, though. Aquaman was really good. Shazam was really good. Birds of Prey, a really good film nobody saw. Wonder Woman 1984 was a fun, guilty pleasure film. James Gunn's Suicide Squad's a great film. Shazam! Fury of the Gods was really good. But, you know, honestly, the more I think about it, let me see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14. Dead air. There's been 14 DCEU movies up to this point, and half of them have actually been somewhat of good. Like, it wasn't a complete mess, but the way it was put together was a real mess. And the news on the last film before we get to this, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, has not been too promising as of right now, but we still have to wait to see how that movie plays out. I have hope for Blue Beetle. I mean, the trailers for it looked kind of fun, so maybe that one could actually work. Maybe Aquaman 2 could work, but regardless of this, I'm really excited to see what they'll do with the reboot of this, with James Gunn and Peter Safran doing the new DC Studios. That even though I did badmouth him for saying that The Flash was one of the greatest superhero movies of all time, I still have my thoughts on that. But I'm excited to see what a James Gunn Superman movie will be like. Like, I think that will be pretty awesome to see. I'm actually really excited to see them do Batman the Brave and the Bold with with this director who did The Flash. I mean, there's still a lot there that can be done with this. I'd be really excited to see what they do with that character, that version of Batman, I should say. Supergirl could be pretty fun. I would be very excited to see if they bring Sasha Calle back to do that, because she was one of the few things in The Flash that I actually did really like. James Mangold's going to do Swamp Thing. That's pretty awesome. There's going to be some shows in there, too, that could be pretty fun as well. So the possibilities are endless. I can see them having a lot of fun here under James Gunn and Peter Safran. I think they can finally get this right because they're taking their time with it. They're going to, and my hope is that they're going to fix the problems that the DCEU had. They're not going to rush it out there because of this writer strike that's been going on. It's probably a good thing that's happening. So they now have the time to actually put together a really good Superman movie that really makes people want to come to these new films. I'm really excited to see what they do here, but yeah, but like I said before, I'm kind of glad that the DCEU was finally coming to an end, because The Flash was just too much for me to handle. Like, I tried to go in there with as much promise and hope as much as I wanted it to succeed. I just couldn't do it, man. I really could not do it. And so I'm glad that this is coming to an end sooner. I'm hoping for the best with Blue Beetle and the Aquaman 2, but I'll be glad when this is over and done with. So yeah. I know I'm going to probably get some hate comments on this one, but let me know down below what you thought. Do you think some of you are probably going to think I'm wrong for this? But let me know why you like The Flash. I'll just sum up my final thoughts here first before we eventually close it out here. Let's answer the question at large. Why did The Flash fail at the box office? It failed because of a number of reasons. The controversies behind Ezra Miller, Warner Brothers trying to save the film as much as they could, but promoting this as one of the greatest achievements in cinema history when it was clearly not. Trying to get reviews to save the film, trying to get celebrities to save the film, poor marketing, it's a poorly executed script, terrible special effects that you try to defend, cameos that should have been great but really was not. It's one of the biggest letdowns I've had in a long, long time, and I'm really saddened to say that this is the worst movie of 2023, at least in my opinion it is, and I'm not too saddened to see the DCEU really go. So thank you guys for watching this video. I'll wrap that up. So if you want to see some of my other videos that I've done, I did a video talking about the live-action Bambi remake and my thoughts on why I think that's my favorite movie of all time. I'll put that in the corner, as well as the playlist to see the other videos I've done for the Reviewing Network Live. So thank you guys for taking the time to listen to this. I want to hear your thoughts on this, and please be constructive on this, please, because I feel this is just my opinion. I want to know your opinion too. So thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next time for another video, and until then, as always, take care.